Hello and welcome to this edition of Bravas Luxury Living Podcast. We've never really asked this before, but I would ask you that if you're watching us on YouTube, we'd love it if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends, family, and anyone else who you might find this interesting. As ever, I have with me Keith from Dallas. Hi Keith, how are you?
Morning, Nigel. I'm doing great.
Great. And Keith, today we're going to discuss one of those subjects which may not be the sexiest thing we ever talk about as a team, but is nevertheless, I think, a really important subject for all of us, which is power and getting the best power into your house. Is it a subject that you find builders talk a lot about or even ask questions about?
You know, I don't. I don't find that we get a lot of questions about it. I think it's one of those things that some people just assume as a frustration that they have to live with, bad power. And if we do get questions, it's, can you protect my house from a lightning strike? So, yeah, I think probably most of our clientele and most of us are pretty uneducated on what we're going to talk about today.
Good. Well, then that seems like a perfect introduction to add in today's guest, Jimmy Paskey from SurgeX. Jimmy is the sales manager of SurgeX. Jimmy, why don't we start and tell us a bit about yourself, how you got here, what your background is, so we can learn a bit more about you.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. I've been in this business since 1999, right out of college. Started with Sony Electronics. Fantastic entree into the custom CEDIA channel. Fell in love with it at that time and have stuck with it ever since, selling various products, theater interiors. That was a real fun part of my career. Loved that. And for the last 12 years, really focused on power and various power solutions from wall wart products for under $50 up to, large energy storage and battery backup solutions over $1 million.
Okay, that's great. So tell us a bit about SurgeX. If people haven't heard you before, who are you and what do you guys do?
Yeah, I was fortunate to get in with SurgeX in 2014 to help pick up from where my predecessor left off, who now manages me. God help him. He was tasked with bringing SurgeX, which was traditionally a professional, commercial, large-scale project brand, focused primarily on the elimination of surge in those large-scale projects. He wanted to bring those into the residential space. And so in 2014, I was brought on board to help grow that business for us. And it's really gone in a different direction. We'll talk more about that, but it's not just about surge. And I totally get what you're saying, Keith, about lightning and people's mentality of power and protection and associating that just mostly with lightning. And then Nigel, yeah, it's not sexy, but I'm here to try to make it as sexy as possible.
So we're asking lots of people who are on these podcasts. When we started this podcast a couple of months ago, I was very nervous about asking too many COVID questions because I thought, COVID's going to clear up, it's going to go away, and people are going to go, why are you still talking about COVID? It appears it's not really gone anywhere yet. So I wonder what that's done to your life and what you're doing day to day as a team.
Well, my life, my last footstep in an airport was March 13th. I was coming home on a red eye from Vegas after working a conference, and never thought that I would spend this many weeks in the home office. And I'm a guy who likes to be in front of people. So I guess what's interesting, I almost hate to admit it, my own family would try to FaceTime me, and I'd be like, I'm not doing that. They're going back 3 years, going back a year. And now I almost get annoyed when we do a web meeting and the person on the other end is not showing their face. So, it's interesting how, something like this pandemic can catapult us into maybe areas we weren't before comfortable.
But what sort of questions are your, in terms of SurgeX and what you do? And I think we're going to break it down a bit in a minute to different solution areas. But what questions are you getting as a result of, product questions? What if we have a customer, an end user, a builder, or somebody listening to this? what would be the things they were asking that you would say, oh, no, that's what you should talk to us about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, taking what I just outlined just with me and, putting that out there around the country, folks are living with their technology. They're having to work from home. We know this, right? And I know firsthand in talking with a counterpart of mine over at Access Networks that right away, folks around the country are like, oh my goodness, my network is horrible, right? It's very tangible. You're doing a meeting like this and people are cutting in and out, and it makes for a very frustrating and challenging business meeting, right? And of course,
right,
that's on top of whoever might be at the house who usually isn't at home. They're at school, or you're taking care of a family and trying to work, and so things can get maybe to breaking points quicker. And as I mentioned, network is pretty tangible. It's in your face if it's not working. Power is different. If a homeowner's saying, gosh, I'm having this problem and it seems to be very sporadic, we call those intermittent problems, right? Issues. And the dealer, the integrator might say, hey, I think it's power related. What's the first thing you think that homeowner's going to do? They're going to look up at the light and they're going to, I don't think it's power related. I've got power.
Exactly.
So this pandemic has helped catapult the conversation where we've always been focused. It's just been a challenge for us to get folks to understand where we're coming from, and that is on the discussion of power quality, not just quantity, not just is power on. Hey, you may have a power issue. You're looking across the street. No, the lights are on at all these homes. My lights are on. It's your thing, Mr. Integrator, Mrs. Integrator. Your thing that you put in here is not working. And so imagine the homeowner saying it because it's tangible. It's looking at them, the remote, the touch panel, the display, and it's not working. So, of course, it's your fault. Or it can't be power, can it?
Well, let's talk on the I've got power, but I have a power problem. Like, what does that mean? Like, what's causing the issues probably that they're seeing?
I would guess, and I'm only guessing because I've done this so many times, and I get a nodded head every time I bring it up. I say, hey, have you ever witnessed the lights in your living area kind of dim down and come back up? Oh, yeah, I've seen that before. Okay, a lot of times that's happened when your HVAC is kicked on, because it might be the largest mechanical load in your home. And when it turns on, it might be on a 50 amp breaker, but it might be pulling way more than 50 amps. And that's just if you happen to have one in a home. Many of these estates we get involved with have multiples of those things. But at any pace, those things are generally drawing more power than just about any other device or load in a home. And when they turn on, they cause a sag in power, and the lights show you that. They dim down because the voltage has dropped. And with that voltage drop, the lights get less bright, and then they come back up as the voltage comes back to near 120, let's say. So it makes it, a homeowner can, I guess, probably look at that scenario and say, something just happened with power, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of saw it, they witnessed it. What's been so helpful for us is to not guess about these things, but instead to put in a diagnostic tool to extract information from a home over a period of time, maybe 30 days, and then present that back and say, we have no problem with power. Okay, great. Power quality is wonderful here. At least for these 30 days it was. Or we've got power fluctuations, which we see all the time. We probably are now getting a log every 1, 2, or 3 days, sometimes multiple logs every other day, from all over the country, from all over. And the most reoccurring thing that we see as it relates to power issues are these fluctuations in voltage, mostly drops.
So when I see a fluctuation in voltage, practically what's that doing to my system? Like, so if I have a video matrix or a network, how's that negatively affecting it in the way that I would notice as a client?
Sometimes you might see something drop out momentarily. Sometimes if you're a homeowner or an end user, you might call in to the integrator and say, hey, that thing you do where you are in your office and you log into my system and you reboot a device and it comes back and I'm happy because you rebooted it remotely. Can we do that again? So reboots and reboots have been going on where they've been managed by integrators and power solutions since 2010 when Blue Bolt first launched. And, SurgeX and APC and Panamex Mermin and Snap, we all, in the power category, we all have these devices that we can help our integrators remotely reboot all the very sensitive devices in a system. But the more sensitivity you have in a device, the less it takes by way of any kind of fluctuation or power event or anomaly to cause that device to freeze or to prematurely fail, because we've seen those voltage drops so frequent enough that it taxes the power supply inside those little sensitive AV devices.
On that note, and I'm probably taking all Nigel's time, but on that note, like in my personal house, our neighborhood, our new house, variable power, we get little brownouts every third day or so. I'll come in and the clocks will all be wrong. Mm-hmm. What's that doing to my devices from a life expectancy? I mean, is that damaging my electronic?
Yeah. When you take voltage away from products, they got to make it up. So they're going to try to make it up by way of current, and that taxes the power supplies inside of these sensitive AV devices much more. And that will, over time, again, if it's long enough, if it happens enough with frequency, it'll take the life of the product in a much quicker time span than the product was designed to last, for sure.
Yeah, I want to jump in here and I want to get some definitions and some terms right, because there's a lot of stuff we're talking about. And there are sort of 4 areas I want us to dig in. So let's go through the 4 areas and see what they're. So we've used the word surge protection. So what is surge protection? And when people think about their home, what should they be thinking about for surge protection?
Yeah, and boy, guys, this is the summertime. So I've had probably a conversation, it feels like every day. I just had one last night. I picked up another one this morning. Typically it's on larger estates, but it doesn't have to be just larger estates. It's just the conversations are way more involved there. I'll hear things like, hey, I'm in a 10,000, 15,000, 30,000 square foot home, and my local utility says I'm good to go with just this whole house surge protector. I'm like, well, yeah, you want to use that for sure. That's going to help for a car hits a telephone pole outside the neighborhood, a tree comes across the power lines, a surge comes from the substation across the power lines, hits the transformer, comes into your home, and then just goes where it wants from that point. If you had that quote unquote whole house surge protector, what would happen is if the surge were large enough, if it were sustained long enough, that box might sacrifice itself, but it hopefully then disconnects the circuit and not allowing any part of that surge into your main distribution panel, your main electrical panel for the home. Because from there, Lord knows where that surge is going to go. By default, a surge just wants to get to ground. It does not care how it gets to ground. It's going to take the path of least resistance, whatever that means. Wherever there's lower impedance on a copper line, a piece of copper, it's going to try to get to ground as quick as it can.
So does that mean you should have a surge protector at the home, at the panel, at every single device, at every plug? So, where does it end?
I'm telling you, and is that tricky. I tell folks all the time, start with a whole house surge protector, absolutely. But 20% of surges come from outside the home, even in Tampa Bay, Florida, lightning capital of the world. 80% of surges are generated within the home. We talked earlier about the HVAC kicking on. Large motors, appliances, hair dryers, all these things, they're generating their own surges and transients. And each time those compressors kick on, those motors kick on, they're throwing surges down the line. They might be smaller, but they're so often that those we talked about life expectancy of products, those can take products out well before you ever see a lightning strike. Many homeowners wait their entire lives to see a lightning strike. Unfortunately, there are some that get hit almost every year. But what I say is whole house surge protector. Sure, absolutely. That's a good primary first defense level of defense. And then protect around the home. You may have multiple TV locations, subwoofers. You may have appliances that you care about. If we get into home automation, you've got cameras, you've got gates, you've got Jandy controls for pools and jacuzzis, and you put all that on your automation system. And guess what? Outdoor speakers. You've got copper wires now coming in from outside going into your home. And this used to get folks all the time back when I was at Panamex in Furman. People would say, well, Jimmy, we had everything in the house protected. I said, did you happen to have outdoor speakers? Now, this is back in the time when outdoor audio was like a thing. It was like a new thing. And yeah, we have outdoor speakers. And okay, so I bet you if you went and checked the amplifier, you might see an entry point where that surge jumped on that copper, came into the amp, and now what? Well, the amp's connected with either Ethernet or HDMI or Lord knows back then what, interconnect cables, and the surge is just trying to find ground, and maybe it jumped on one of those interconnect cables and just started going through some of your AV in the rack from there. So, yeah, we want to try to protect those low voltage connectors. There are plenty of products out there from companies like Transient Protection Design. That's one of the ones I like to recommend all the time. They do quite well with that product. SurgeX does very good at eliminating surges at wall outlets or between circuit breakers and wall outlets, multiple breakers at a time. But all we're doing there, Nigel, is we're just lowering the risk.
Okay.
There's no way we can guarantee you're not going to have any kind of damage.
Okay, so surges, I think we get. The other phrase I hear a lot is power conditioning. So how does surges and power, what's power conditioning? Surges is an increase in the line. What is conditioning doing for me?
Boy, I tell you, that's got to be one of the toughest things to sell. Because
life insurance.
Well, homeowners, they think, and many of us in this business think in terms of power quantity, but we're not digging in and we're not looking at the power quality. And I got to tell you guys, my time at Furman and really rolling around with Garth Powell, who now is over at Audio Quest. He's been there quite some time. You talk about power conditioning. You want to try to eliminate noise and power as much as possible. And noise and power could come from the various loads inside your home, a dishwasher running, the lighting being dimmed, the washing machine, all the appliances, hair dryers, all the motor loads, ceiling fans, HVAC, all those things. When we talked about the transients and surges coming down the line when they kick on, well, much of that is read by noise coming down the line. And so if I'm trying to watch my nice, brand new, humongous 4K TV, and I'm expecting to get that 4K resolution, but I'm plugged in with no filtration, no conditioning of my power at all, I'm going to mask a lot of what I could have seen. If I try to enjoy my $50,000, my $25,000, my $500,000 audio system, or my theater, the audio of my theater, and I'm plugging everything in straight into the wall, and I'm not conditioning the power, I'm going to mask the resolution that I'm going to be able to hear. So all we're trying to do in the power category, all of us, Taurus and Audio Quest and Panamex Furman, SurgeX, we're all trying to make sure that the consumer benefits from their nice system without interruption, but also benefits in totality. They paid good money for that system. They should appreciate all that it has to offer.
So if I have a fancy home theater, do I need to put both power conditioning and surge protection on it? Is that two different things? Is it the same thing? How do I solve that problem, practically speaking?
Yeah, I would say that we're the best at surge elimination. SurgeX. Of course I'm going to say that, right? I work for the company, but we are. But, I get asked quite often, I've got this really elaborate amplifier / speaker system, 2-channel audio. What do you think? And I'm thinking, well, you want to drop the noise floor down. You want to condition the power. as much as possible. And you also want to bring to the amplifier some level of current reservoir so the power supplies in the amplifier can act really efficiently. So yeah, Nigel, I think that the best that we can do as integrators is we can listen to the consumer and design a system for their needs and hopefully exceed those, right? Because, I think too often they don't know what you integrators are capable of doing. And then you're like, hey, I heard you, but watch this. Listen to this. And they get blown away. And part of that's because you know that the application two-channel audio might require something a bit nicer by way of conditioning power. So absolutely.
So maybe there's a third leg of that stool as well, which is backup. So, for many of us, I live in a large building. So, when my power goes down, the whole state's gone down or the whole city's gone down. But I know there are lots of our clients, lots of people building homes that are more remote. So I guess the third leg of the product school is about backup, isn't it?
Yeah. And for us, a lot of when we talk about conditioning of power, when we get into large scale systems, we can then enter in a very big way, in a very heavy performance driven way, a system that can provide power when there is no power. But I like to say that's the tertiary benefit, because lightning is kind of rare. Power outages, although they may happen, and they may happen to you in your lifetime more so than a lightning strike for sure, the fluctuation of power is happening every day, almost everywhere. It's very rare for me to have a log come back to my email that does not have some sort of power fluctuation in it. So what we like battery backup solutions for is kind of threefold. Stabilization of power. We want the equipment in your home, and that could be just audio video. It could be the AV side. It could be lighting. And it could be some of your most critical appliances or loads. Like I had a gentleman talk to me about a very elaborate aquarium in his home. And if that aquarium were to change by 1 or 2 degrees, he would be out a good sum of money just in fish. So, I didn't think about that all that much. Wine chillers, they've come up. Sump pumps in San Diego, they're large. They're large loads. And so often we've got to fight them with 10 kVA, 15 kVA, 20 kVA or higher large UPSs. They're going to stabilize the power for the homeowner, for the entire property, for just a portion of the property, for just a portion of the stuff in the home. They're going to clean the power, okay? And then they're going to provide power when there is no power. And our niche is to work in synergy with a generator, rather. So our UPS is on site, and we're working in tandem with the generator. We're going to carry the load over until that generator kicks on, because it's going to take seconds to a minute and a half for that generator not just to kick on, but to turn on and then stabilize power.
So, Jimmy, one of the really unique options that we have, or capabilities we have that an end user wouldn't, is we're in the house before it's built a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things we can do, like running loops to all the TVs so we can put them on a surge protector in the rack area. What are some other things that we can do, or that a client can think about during construction, so that they're not just chasing the problems when they're in the home?
I think it was on our third retrofit job where we had put in roughly $50,000 in a couple of UPS products. It was around the third time that we did that an idea came to my team where we said, we really want to take control of our power situation. And if you're in the home, like you're saying, Keith, well ahead of the home being lived in, then you can do just that. You can ensure that no matter what happens, car hits a telephone pole out there. Yeah, the rest of the neighborhood, Nigel's building might be down, but maybe Nigel's residence is not down. Maybe the homeowner that listens to us, they're not affected because someone took it upon themselves to ensure that the power quality was going to be there no matter what. So traditionally, it's been by use of a generator. but we've added so many sensitive electronics into home systems just in the last 3 years. We can't wait for that generator to turn on. And even when it does turn on, it's going to throw a big surge down the line. And it's going to have unstable voltage until it levels out. So how do we compensate for that? Put in a UPS, whether it's a small UPS for a couple of things or a big UPS for a lot of things, whether it's for just one section of the home or for the entire estate. Take control of your power situation, integrate with the generator, bring in solar, an alternative power source, solar, wind, geothermal, and interconnect that with battery storage. Our niche still will be that we work with systems like that by carrying over while we wait for those alternate power sources to turn on.
So I know that every homeowner we talk to, one of the things we talk about all the time is the control system. That the worst case scenario is 50 remote controls, 30 apps, three different iPhone screens full of stuff to manage your house. How do you guys integrate with the control systems that some of our clients might have in their homes?
Well, I just thank God for integrators like you all, because we're in our own silo. We're just the power brand. That's the audio brand, and that's the matrix over there. And so thank God you guys know how to bring all this stuff together. But we're helping by way of at least communicating how you want us to communicate with the rest of the system, and that's via RS-232 or Ethernet connection to get on the network. And by doing that, it enables you to check the health of the system. You're very adept at checking the health of the network. Audio and video integrators have been doing that for years. Now you can check the health of the power side as well. We could go back and pull logs of information from 3 months to 6 months ago plus, and we can see, there's a pattern in this fluctuation of voltage. There seems to be an issue with the neutral to ground voltage, just as an example, and we dig in and we find out it's the transformer. It's nothing in the home. It's not the wiring the electrician did. It's coming from the utility. Something happened. And to give you an example of what that might be, we've had corroded transformers. So it's amazing sometimes at some of the stuff we can help the integrators find, and it helps address the root cause of an issue so you can fix it and then move on.
Jimmy, in the past, we've had a personal example from one of our jobs. We had a client who was having network issues, and the ISP said, no, that's on your network. And by monitoring the network over a series of weeks, we were able to figure out that there was actually a bad line coming into the house. So we were able to do something with that information. Is there something that, does generating those reports give us some ability to help fix those external issues?
I will tell you what one of your colleagues told me, James Westbrook, in the Dallas area. I was talking about our Vision diagnostic tool, and James stopped me and he says, "Hey, let me tell you about that." He said, we had a log generated at a job site, and within 12 minutes, we had the utility acting. 12 minutes. I said, that's got to be a record. And I think the reason was we didn't just suspect we had an issue. We didn't just suspect it, then we measured, and for that very one moment in time, we had an issue. The utility might be like, well, we'll come out, we'll monitor, situation, see what's going on. But we had sheets of data. And the data was, I guess, bad enough to where the utility said, that does seem to be a bit of a problem. And they did fix something out on the pole. I don't know the exact details, but James was just quite pleased that we had, science and math to bring to someone to say, hey, we've got an issue here. It seems to be quite big, significant, and then it gets addressed quicker. So yeah, absolutely, we can help with that.
Pretty powerful. So we're talking about these problems that we're seeing in the house or things we can address. What's the most basic way that someone could address power issues in their home? And then kind of just tell us quickly the steps to scale that up from, an inexpensive piece of electronics to a whole house.
Yeah, I like how you just phrased that. So a few years back, another Bravas member helped me. 2015 actually is when it was, February of 15. The location in Houston helped me come up with this idea of standardizing on a solid power foundation. what we witnessed was, and it was kind of like trial and error, if we put in a surge protection, a surge elimination piece that does not contaminate ground, and we follow that up with an online dual conversion UPS that provides nothing but just stable voltage, that also happens to clean power by way of converting from AC to DC to AC. So it cleans it, it stabilizes it, and Nigel provides power when there is no power, back to that backup conversation. And then choose a platform that you use for your business that gives you the control of power. So when you do have an issue, you can solve it lickety-split. Customer says, something happened, I don't know what's going on, but you do that thing where you reboot remotely and you've reestablished communication, and now the touch panel works again. Thank you so much. You didn't have to waste time, and it's not always about the money that somebody has to pay to have a tech or two come out. It's the time. And who has time, right? Nowadays, we're all so busy. So protection, stabilization, and then control of power. And from there, it's just a matter of how many circuits do we have that we want to do that with? And how many devices do we have, or how much of the home do we have to consider critical enough to put on a large-scale UPS? And so we go from, around a couple $1,000s way up from there. How much stuff do you have? How long do you need it to run for? If there's a generator on site, that's going to save us a lot of money. We can be a lot more economical in our approach. If there isn't a generator on site and the load is quite large and you want it to run for 24 hours, that's going to cost a good penny.
So the company I used to work for, my very first job out of college, we got a UPS with our computer, and it just said, plug anything into this that has a spinning hard drive. So they had a reason behind doing that. What are some devices, some of the most obvious devices that people would need to protect with the UPS?
Well, that list has grown. And the way I liken it is back in 2010, when I was with another company and we were rolling out an IP addressable power product, there were three things you'd have to reboot: the home automation processor, the network, and the cable set-top box. 2010 and 11 and around 2012. Around 2012-13, the list starts growing. Smart TVs come out, and all of a sudden they have CPUs in them, and they're connecting to the network, and they have to be rebooted. And then receivers. I'll never forget, I had worked with Marantz for a while, and my former boss there, Ted Thompson, says, don't forget receivers. Because he knew, in his world, we have to reboot these things too. Dealers are starting to say they've got to be rebooted occasionally. And it's mainly because something in the logic circuit of that sensitive device is getting frozen up. And in order to get the clock spinning in time and in sync with other devices it's connected to, you've got to reboot it to reestablish that communication, restart that clock. So look at devices 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and how big they were. The ability for those devices to withstand power surges, transients, noise, fluctuations was much greater than I am in shock about how small the dish hopper box is. The thing's like a Lego waffle. But it wasn't that way 5 years ago. But how do you get that, right? The logic circuits inside can do so much more these days, and they take up so little space. Their footprints are so small. So we really want to, try to put anything that's critical, and think about your appliances are getting just as smart as your AV. Now they have got those logic circuits inside. So the fridge has come up a lot, the washing machine, sometimes the ovens, which, you don't really need your oven on a battery backup, but you might need the componentry inside that. That's what people are concerned about.
So listen, I think we could probably ask you a question for hours, and I'd be interested in anyone who's listening to the podcast or watching this on YouTube. If you have questions, if you have things that this subject is bringing up, please put them on the comments, send them to one of us in an email. We'd love to collect a whole bunch of questions, maybe Jimmy get you back. But before we let you go, we have 3 questions for you. This is our quick fire game that just to learn a bit more about you and the things that matter to you. So we have 3 questions for you. Short answers. Number 1, what is the piece of technology in your home, in your life, that you think you couldn't live without?
Don't
I
say
love what's that?
don't say surge protection.
No. I think it's my automation system, and it's a catch-22. I love it to death, but if something goes awry, oh, I never hear the end of it. My wife's like, I can't believe our whole home is, down if this thing's down. She's talking about the remote, or maybe it's the network or something, and I fix or fix it quickly. But when I would travel, it's a bit tougher to resolve. But I love when I'm home that I can just go around, my 10 zones of audio and listen to music while I'm making coffee, or go outside and really, relax on the back deck with a really cool audio system outside. But yeah, my automation system.
Okay, the second question is there a project you've worked on recently, or is there a use of your technology that you went, wow, that's just incredible, that you can think of you did recently?
Well, just last night, a bunch of us around the country will get together kind of casually. Last night, it was around 1:30 a.m. My counterpart says, check this out, and he shows a screenshot of this simulator. It's a car simulation that someone's going to put in their home. And I think it was about $500,000, and it's 480 volts.
Wow.
Not to geek out, but he's like, do you have anything that's 480 volts? Because, we're going to want to make sure it's got stable power and there's no interruption. The last thing you want is, while you're racing, is to, what the heck just happened? No power? What? So I'm like, yeah, man, that would be exciting. And so it hasn't happened. It's not closed, but just the fact that there was a $500,000 car simulation gadget out there was just like, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, if you're a Formula One fan, you were watching before the season started on Twitch, people racing in rigs that cost a lot of money just electronically. Okay, last question for you. If you could wave a magic wand, invent a gadget that's never existed before, what one thing would you like it to do?
Oh, wow. How about slow down time? I bought a turntable a year ago. I started getting a Sunday paper, and I'm this close to getting a straight edge razor, because we're so connected. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like and I make my coffee every morning without a Keurig. My wife makes it in the Keurig, and she literally said to me 2 mornings ago, I'm doing pour over coffee. I boil the water, I grind the beans. It takes me forever to make the coffee. So I guess I'm purposefully trying to slow my ass down, because I feel like, we're in such a high-tech environment, and everything is just exponentially increases in speed and what it can do, right? So something to slow time down, maybe, or slow ourselves down.
Okay, so a time slower, we will get around inventing that. Listen, Jimmy, thank you. As ever, it's a great pleasure. I learn a huge amount listening to you, and I'd love if people do have questions, if people have thoughts, they put them in the comments or send them to us, and maybe we'll find another chance to hear more about this whole subject later. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah.